I'd have to say, to get up at this time in the morning to listen to a surfer is amazing. It's the first time it's ever happened in my life. The fact there's a rugby afterwards is perhaps irrelevant. But anyway, fantastic to be here. Big thanks for the welcome I've got. And I am really actually pleased to be here because on, I think it's Wednesday this week, has anybody heard of the 7 bore? Okay, the 7 bore, I've been riding for over 20 years now. And the 7 bore is like no other wave you've ever ridden. It's literally like a tidal wave that will not let you off. And on Wednesday, it was one of those beautiful mornings like this. There was nice mist on the wave, and there was just hardly anybody around. So life was good, and I was looking forward to getting a ride. You can ride it up to 3.5 miles if you know where to go. And I ride it in 3 different places. So you jump in the car, you go up the river, ride it, and jump in the car and go up the river. And there was a nice little microlight coming and getting some great shots as well. So what could be better? Just me and a few others. And as the wave came round at the second place, I'm thinking it was quite deep where I normally surf it, which means the wave is going to break very, very near the shore. And so I've done that before. Need to duck a bit and every now and again. Rode it for about 1/2 mile. Then as I came around the bend, I was just met by a large mud flap that suddenly appeared. Now, something like the bore, you can't just get off this. And all I knew was that I'm in a bit of trouble here. I had a very, quite expensive camera on my head. So you'll be able to see all this if you're either YouTube or Facebook. And I decided to get down to my knees as soon as possible because I was going to have to go through this mud. And for the first 10, 15 yards, it just swept me through this mud flap. And then all I can see is bush, tree, bush, and everything else. And I'm hanging on with my hand to the camera as I'm just literally being stuffed through trees and bushes and everything else. And all I can remember is, no God, not now. Because to be honest, that next hit would have knocked me out and that was it, gone. And I finally staggered out. And the first thing I do is look down and there's half a surfboard. The only good news is I realised it wasn't my half surfboard. I don't know where it had come from, but there it was, the first broken board I've ever seen on the 7 bore. So anyway, yeah, if you want to follow me on Facebook, you'll see it, and YouTube, it's under 7 Bore Boys. So I really was quite shaken up. The good news was I just got back in the car, went up the river, and then rode it for another 2.5 miles, so I was pretty stoked. I just open in prayer and give thanks for breakfast. Lord, just want to thanks for these guys. I want to thank you that life is exciting. I want to thank you that we're going to have a great time this morning, and just thanks for what you've done in my life. Amen. My mum always tells me to speak slowly so that people at the back can, but sometimes I get so excited about what I'm talking about that I forget that. So if I start going too quickly, please tell me and I'll try and slow down. Probably just worth introduction of who I am. I've been involved with an organisation called Christian Surfers now for the best part of 19 years. I live in Nailsea, which, as some of you might know, is a beautiful seaside resort about 8 miles from Bristol. So it's nowhere near the sea, and God has got a sense of humour. So to be running a Christian Surfers ministry from there is quite bizarre, but more of that in a bit later. I have 1 wife and 2 children, and they're growing up rapidly. And we've lived in Nailsea. We go to an Anglican church there, and we've been doing youth work, dare I say, for 24 years, which is quite a frightening thing. Still as excited about it now as I was when we first started there. And I just want to tell you a little bit about my story, a little bit about what I'm doing, and a little bit, 1 or 2 stories about how I believe that God's really helped us. And I have to say, the basis of all this is I am not a very spiritual type of bloke. I'm like most of the people in here room. We get on okay sometimes, then we get strayed, and then God sort of brings us back. But yet, amazingly, he's never given up on me. And some of the stuff, some of the stories we've heard, it will just, or for me, even now, I'm just amazed. But it just confirms to me that actually God is alive and looking after me here and now. And that story, perhaps the other day, was an illustration of that. I grew up actually in Nigeria. And I actually thought, as I got older, that I might be able to get nationality and be the only surfer in the Nigerian surf team. But it never ever happened. But my dad was a missionary. In fact, his dad was a missionary as well. So I had a major issue trying to get my first passport because we were all born in Nigeria. But my dad then went on to become a vicar. Is anybody a vicar's kid here? Or, there you go, there's always vicar's kids around. And I think as a vicar's kid, you either go one way or t'other. My mum and dad, very, very faithful, prayed for us every single day. And just amazing parents, really. But you obviously got a fair bit of stick as a vicar. And you're brought up and you're expected just to be an A1, you know, what a wonderful kid this is, you know, he's a vicar's kid and he's all got it sorted. As a young lad, that obviously was not the case. But my passion wasn't getting up to all sorts of mischief, drinking, that sort of stuff, but it was just excitement and it's energy. So at the age of 13, we used to regularly get up and we used to hitchhike from Bristol, where my dad was, all the way to Woolacombe. And I don't quite know you get away with it now, but we used to hitchhike there with our skateboards. We used to surf, hire surfboards and then sleep in the sand dunes at night. And that, to me, was what excitement was all about. But as I say, sadly, nowadays, you probably wouldn't be allowed to do that. I had to make a decision at some stage as to what my father was talking about, whether I believed in it or not. And I think for all of us, there's a time when, you know, we hear a lot of words, but actually we need to decide, is this something that I want to be part of? Is it something I believe in? Or is it just what people talk about? And I came across a bunch of people that I thought, actually, these guys are a bit spot on. You know, some of the Anglican people in our church were quite sort of oldish and didn't relate to these young whippersnappers. But these guys in Crusaders actually related to us. Has anybody been involved with Crusaders? Okay, I'm sure they've got a legacy, even older than me. I've just turned 50 and I know they've been going for many, many years. And I first went along to one of their camps. And it was great because we did lots of exciting things. We got involved in lots of water activities and we just basically had a great time as a kid. And I just felt, actually, I can trust these guys. They can relate to me. They care about me. And as a result of that, I decided just to get alongside them a bit and understand what was making them tick. And that's probably where what my dad and mum had been praying for and talking to me about suddenly became a reality. And at the age of 13, I decided to just take that step and decided to just call Jesus in and say, okay, I haven't really got this sorted, but give us a chance and get into my life. So that was probably about the age of 13. We, then from there, I decided to go to college. And there was only one place I was going to go. Obviously, of course, is important, but actually close proximity to the surf was, for me, even more important. So Plymouth Polytechnic was where we decided to go. And I went there because, well, there was some surf near there as well as the course. And again, I decided to just get involved in whatever I needed to. And I was one of those people that actually didn't anticipate leading anything and yet somehow ended up getting involved and leading the surf club. And we won the National Surf Championships 3 times running, which we were pretty stoked about. And I was also involved in the CU there and the badminton club and everything else. So it's fair to say at college, life was fun. I was never ever going to get a first. I don't think I was ever going to get a 2-1. I was happy getting a 2-2 and job done. Enjoyed life as well. So all those that get a 2-2, I'm with you guys. Through that time, my passion for surfing continued. It's one of those things, I don't know whether people, has anybody surfed here in the room? Okay, some surfers in the room. It's one of those sports that actually becomes quite addictive. And it's actually a very selfish sport because ideally what you want to do, you want to get up before anybody else is up. You want to sneak off to the waves, you want to surf a perfect wave with just two or three of your mates and then just go again. And it's not the sort of sport where you're actually saying, okay, we're going to meet 15 of us and I spend the whole day organising lifts for everybody, and by the time we've got there, it's gone on shore, there's hundreds of people in the water. And sometimes I think we've been really challenged for me as to, do I actually, does the sort of sport of surfing, is it my sort of master? Or do I actually have to say, God, actually, this needs to come second place to you and my family and everything else? And there have been times when God's actually had to sort of give me a bit of a clip round the ear hole and say, actually, Phil, don't let this sport take over your life. And one of those times was at college. I was unemployed afterwards. It was in the last recession. And I was real passionate about surfing, and I got my wetsuit nicked. And that sort of was a reality check for me. And I actually had to go back to God and say, if you want to take my sport, then take it. And he said, I want to take it. I want you to continue with it. And I've got plans for you. So that's probably how I first got involved with this organisation, Christian Surfers. And at the same time as this, I did my degree at Plymouth, got my degree, and I joined a company that used to be called British Road Services. Has anybody heard of those? Distribution company. That then joined up with XL Logistics, etc. And I was a manager of that for 19 years. And I worked my way up through the ranks. It kept changing direction, and my area got bigger and bigger and bigger until the time I was a regional director for one of the big companies there. And probably for those last years when I was with XL, the Christian Surfers began to grow as well. So I had these two competing distractions on my life, and my poor old wife was stuck in the middle somewhere. And I'll tell you about my work life, and then we'll come back to the Christian Surfers. And I was very much aware that actually in my work life, God was very present there. And I first went to a international conference, because the gathering of Christian Surfers meets internationally every 2 years. And I got there, and there was all these spiritual men of God that were really, they were doing it full time. And I remember thinking, actually, all I do is run a large distribution centre, and these are amazing people. And God told me very clearly, Phil, you are a full-time missionary in that distribution centre. And that was really actually rewarding for me, because you suddenly realise that we're all here, if we're willing to listen. We are the God people in so many people's lives, and we'll be used by God. And I honestly believe that we only see the tip of the iceberg, what God is doing in our lives. And I was then challenged as I went up the corporate ladder. I was running a large distribution centre for Sainsbury's. As you go into the M32, there's a very large distribution centre on the left-hand side. And that was one of the ones I was running. And God actually then challenged me to say, are you prepared to give all this up and run Christian Surfers full-time? Now, I was quite happy I had a nice salary, nice car. I was quite happy to help somebody else, but to run it myself and live by faith was pretty scary. So I just thought about that, and I thought, well, I don't know, God, it's up to you. And we prayed the prayer that I'll do this if you show me it's right. A lot of things happened, so I reversed that prayer to say, God, I will leave unless you tell me it's wrong. And that's quite frightening. And the depot I'd taken over was an absolute nightmare. My boss had sold it as a bit of tinkering here and there. There was about 700 odd people there. And the rule books, the contracts, which the people were working to, had been thrown out the window. The customer was not very happy, and we'd been basically given a year's notice. Probably the hardest 18 months of my life, trying to re-engineer that distribution centre. And finally, through many, many hard work, renewing my management team, we got this amazing new contract with Sainsbury's to build a brand new depot and to run that. And it was then that God said, right, now I want you to leave. And I prayed about it all that weekend, and I said, sheesh, is this really right? The next morning, or on the Monday, my boss said to me, Phil, I don't understand why you weren't so enthusiastic about when we won the contract. The world's your oyster. And it was like one of those things that you didn't actually mean to say, but you end up saying, well, God's told me to leave, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And you thought, why have I just said that? And within 24 hours, he said, well, Phil, I think you're mad, but I admire your faith. You've done a good job for us. I'll talk to the Human Resources Director. And suddenly you realise that all this is out now, and you're on your way out. 19 years I've been there, and geez. So what I said was, look, I'll project manage the closure of one depot, build the new depot, and then I'll just walk away. And that was agreed. So it's great time. And then I been answered freelance work, and I'm thinking, this is so easy. It's lots of money coming in. And God said, no, no, you've got to leave. That's what I've told you to do. So I decided to leave. It was just under 10 years ago. And on the final day, because we'd not had a massive Phil, this is you. It was just that still, small, calm voice to say, Phil, trust me. And on my last day, my boss shook me by the hand and said, Phil, well done, mate. Still think you're mad, but you've done a good job. Here's all your various bonuses, your back pay and everything else. And he said, by the way, I've managed to get you a little bit extra. And there was an extra £30,000 as a thank you. Now, that to me was probably the time that I'm thinking, now I know you're in it, God. Because to go from a very, very nice salary to absolutely nothing overnight was going to be a big challenge. And that £30,000 was just a massive help to tide us over until... And I've now been living by faith for 9.5 years. I've lost a few hairs, but I'm still know that God has never, ever let us down. And it's been an incredible journey. And it's, well, so far going to continue. So where does Christian Surfers come into it? We're passionate about breaking down preconceived ideas about what Christianity is about. We're passionate about our sport. We're passionate about our faith. And we like to bring two things together. There's loads of resources out in the back there, leaflets about us. And again, some of the other resources we use, we work in collaboration. These are little study guides. And also, very visual. This is a book which explains all about what we do in nice pictures. So have a look at that and take some stuff if you want it. And our passion, as I say, is to do our own events, but also work alongside. There's 350,000 surfers in the UK, which is probably far more than we anticipate, even in the middle of winter. So it's a massive field for me. And I also, as one of my other hats, also run up Christian Skaters, and we have a mobile skate park. And has anybody heard of the Malmesbury Skate Festival? Okay. Well, in February each year, we take our skate park into Malmesbury. We convert the Abbey into an amazing skate park. And to see, I think last year we had about 800 kids came through in 3 days, plus everybody else that was there. And we had guys make commitments to follow Christ for the first time. Fantastic opportunity. We'll be there in February. And that's the sort of stuff that we get involved with. As far as Christian skaters are concerned, Christian surfers, we run the Jesus Surf Classic. What we've always tried to do is to not hide what we're about. And therefore, the name Jesus is pretty high in that. And yet, amazingly, we've now run it for 19 years. And it's now one of the biggest and longest running surf contests in the UK. Now, that is not because of how good we are. We try to invest a lot in it. But God has just blessed us with amazing relationships with the little Groms, as they're called, the under-12s, right the way through. And each year, that contest sort of continues to bring more and more people involved. We're now serving on the UK Pro Tour. So, for instance, the team where I'd normally be has gone to Scarborough today. They're then moving on to Thurso in Scotland. And then they're coming back down to Wales in a week's time. That's serving the UK surf team, the tour, the top 80 surfers in Britain. And that's what we're about, just serving and actually just working alongside it. And I have a phrase that says, what we do gives us permission for what we say. Got no idea whether somebody interesting made that up, but that's to me what it's all about. It's about building those relationships. It's not about preaching at people, but it's just being real and relevant to the surfing community. Just conscious of time today, so just want to tell you just one or two perhaps little stories about what we've seen God do in the surfing world. The Jesus Surf Classic has got a history of always having waves, because without waves, wouldn't be too good, would it? At the start of the week, nowadays, you can get, at 6 o'clock this morning, I could have got a photo of what the surf was doing in North Devon. Going back 10, 15 years ago, you'd be listening to the shipping forecast at Radio 4 at midnight. That's the only way you'd find out how the surf was. So things have changed a lot, partly for the good, best, but partly so many people know about it now. But the Surf Classic, we need waves. And about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a forecast that said this weekend is going to be complete and utterly flat. My wife realised it's the most stressful week for me leading up to that, because when you see stuff like that, and all the surf prediction sites are saying 0.4 metres, 0.5 metres, which probably means it's going to be under a foot, and you cannot run. And I'm thinking, geez, this is out of my hands. And to me, when stuff's out of your hands, that's when God really takes over, although it's quite stressful. And I just rang one or two people and I said, hey guys, what do you think? We've never ever cancelled an event. Logic says it's going to be flat. What do you reckon? I said, I think God wants us to go on. And he said, absolutely, Phil, just charge on. The 3 other contests that weekend cancelled. And I'm now thinking, we are mad, completely mad. And yet, somehow, we just felt that we were going to, by the end of that weekend, have sort of climbed a mountain and come down again and look back and say, whatever's happened that weekend, God, we give you the glory. And on Friday morning, I went to the contest site, flat as a pancake, beautiful, hot and sunny, but completely flat. And I got all the team around us. There's over 120 helpers go to this event. It's at Croyd. And even some of my hardest allies are thinking, Phil, you are mad. Saturday morning, I'm there. Well, in fact, Friday night, just as it was getting dark, I was literally decided just go and just pray over the ocean. Sheesh, I still remember it so well. And there was not a ripple coming through. And Saturday morning, again, not a ripple. And now even my wife's thinking I'm mad. And yet we decided just to keep praying. And amazingly, all the surfers checked in. They travelled from all around the country and they'd all checked in for some stupid reason that they trusted the Surf Classic always has waves. And we just prayed again in the morning. We're quite open with people. We don't know where the waves are coming from, but we don't want to waste your time. And I'm thinking, I don't want to make a fool of God. I don't make a fool of myself. And by 10:30, little ripples started coming in. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, we had 4-foot offshore clean waves. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it came from at all. And we had one of the most amazing contests. And I said to you earlier about you don't quite know what God's doing sometimes when you see the tip of the iceberg. About 6 months ago, there was a book written called Grey Skies, Green Waves. And I'd never heard of it. I knew the author a bit. He was one of our sort of friends. He hasn't got a faith, but I suppose he likes what we're doing about. And people kept saying, oh, Phil, I'm reading all about you. And I'm thinking, what's this in? And he's got a chapter in this book called The Jesus Surf Classic, Faith and the Jesus Surf Classic. And that's his report, far more powerful than mine, of how even he decided to come from Porthcawl in South Wales. And he says he kept rounding the bend and there was this single solitary soul with his feet in the water. And he realized it was me praying for the event. And it's depicted in there in such a powerful way, and that's written by a non-Christian. But the key thing was, again, we had to make that step before God was able to do things. That was just one story. Another story was we were in Ireland. I was actually involved in this, but it just blew my mind because I knew the guys. And a lot of what we do is serving people. And there was a big festival down on the south coast. Hundreds of people go there. And Christian surfers are often there saying, look, we'll do a barbecue for the leadership, that sort of stuff. It's free, whatever. This got a bit confused on this day. So it's a massive beach festival. And over the PA system came this announcement. The Christian surfers are doing a free barbecue for everybody. Now, these guys, there was literally 3 of them because the rest of the people had bailed on them. And there's these 3 guys thinking, hang on a minute, what on earth are we doing? We've literally, loaves and fishes situation. We've got about 40 burgers, that's it. So again, they set up this stall, they start creating the burgers, and they're thinking this queue is now 150, 200 people long. This guy's got amazing faith, and he's saying, bro, we're going to have to pray about this, we're not sure what to happen. And then from the tent behind him, there's a psst, psst, and he looks behind, and there's a lady who's poking out from the marquee and saying, I don't know whether we can help, but we were just down the road there. We'd created about 400 bits of cooked chicken for an event that was then cancelled. Could you use it? So these guys cannot believe it. And she literally brings out all this pre-cooked chicken, which is hot. And so no doubt about it, everybody is fed. Then what happens is the Christian motorbike crew come in from Ireland and say, hey guys, don't know if you can help. We've just come down from a village. Because this festival's on, there was a bakery up there. There's just nobody in town. And they've just said, all this stuff is going to go to waste. Can you help? And they've given them 4 boxes of buns and cakes and everything else. So the guys then over the announcer phone saying, Christian surfers not only have got a barbecue, but there's free cakes as well for everybody. And again, just complete and utterly amazing what God can do, just stepping in faith. And I think, just again, the final story I'll just mention is about, again, I'm very choosy how I pray for events. We do a Nailsy Skate Festival, and I'm a bit choosy because I don't want any rain. For 9 years, we've not had any rain for that event. And that's either by chance, or if you've got a faith, you think the big man's looking after you. Even this year, 10 o'clock in the morning, chucking it down with rain. I'm thinking, are we going to carry on with this? Again, remember what I've done in the past. Stepped out in faith. By 12 o'clock, the sun was shining. Beautiful day. Far more powerful a witness rather than the sun shining the whole day. But on an occasion, I was at Bude. And again, we were, this time, there was huge waves. Okay? And I was there, and we'd run 3 heats of the Bude Surf Classic. And it was so big that the guys basically couldn't get out. And so by 10:30 on the Saturday of a full weekend, I've had to say, that's it, we're going to have to cancel the contest for the day. We've got 2 days worth of heats. And all I can remember is there was 2 other girls that were there. We saw this squall coming across. And all I remember is, guys, just hang on to this marquee because this is going to go. And the rain and the wind just lashed that down completely. And I was sat there thinking, because everybody else had gone by then, you know, I said, look, we'll check in again tomorrow morning. The forecast was to get even bigger and stronger. And I'm sitting there reading the Bible and thinking, geez, I don't know what to do about this. Anyway, it was, the daily notes I was reading was all about, amazingly, Jesus calming the storm. And it said, it was in Mark 4:35-41. That day, when evening came, he said to the disciples, let us go over to the other side, leaving the crowd behind. Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There was also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died, and it was completely calm. And he said to the disciples, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? And that may have just been chance, but that actually spoke to me so clearly. And we had a team meeting that night, and I said, look, guys, I know the forecast is to get even stormier. I don't know what we're going to do, but all I know is that's what it is. And I handed the daily notes around to people. And we just prayed. And that night, I went to bed expecting somehow the storm to abate. And it didn't. It just got heavier and heavier. And I'm lying there restless thinking, sheesh. Next day, still windy, but amazingly, the wind had changed from an onshore direction to what's called an offshore direction, so that all the waves were now cleaned up, and we actually had some amazing waves. So we were able to double heat it all the way through. I had a friend ring up, or a competitor ring up from Newquay, which is only an hour and a half down the road, and said, assuming, Phil, you're going to cancel the event for the day, because here it's absolutely horrendous. I said, we've got fantastic waves here. We were given 4 hours of amazing waves before the wind changed again. And I just looked back on that and said, even the winds and waves obey me. So I tell you these stories not because I'm some massive great philosopher or some really important Christian person. I'm just a normal bloke that is out of my depth and relying on God to take over. And there are so many stories in the surf industry where people have had to do that. Christian Surfers is active in 26 different countries. We meet up every 2 years, the tribe as we call it, with about 150 leaders. And it's amazing to me that God can organise a bunch of surfers to actually do a great job of networking. But every year it's just amazing just to hear what God is doing. We've got a chaplain on the world tour, the world's top 44 surfers. We have a chaplain that goes around with that. God has opened amazing doors, and even today in this country he's doing some amazing things. And we were with Bethany Hamilton. Did anyone hear about Bethany? She had her arm taken off by a shark. We were with him last week. Again, that girl has just got the most amazing faith. Imagine being, as we are, sportsmen, sports people, or whatever our passion is, and then potentially having it taken away by losing an arm completely. And yet she has got literally back on that surfboard. She's still sponsored by Rip Curl. She's a role model to thousands and thousands, and that's why she sees that God has been giving her a bit of a bum deal because she's only got one arm, but yet the ability to teach and to reach so many thousands and thousands of people. And it's just been an amazing journey. So just in conclusion, big thanks for listening. I'm going to be out there. As I said, we've got lots of resources just to have a look at and that sort of stuff. We've got a website, christiansurfers.co.uk. We're passionate about our sport. We're passionate about our skateboarding, about surfboarding. There's nothing I love best than getting up at crack of dawn, even now. There's a little phrase that a grommet is a little sort of 12-year-old that can't get enough of the sport. I'm a 50-year-old grommet, and I don't mind being called a grommet for that. So there's plenty of stuff out there to chat about, and if you want to get involved in any way. But I've been, as I say, living by faith now for 9.5 years. God has never let me down in that time. I'm not saying it's been all plain sailing, and obviously in these economic times there's been some tough calls. But I honestly can say, for me, as just a normal Joe Bloggs, God has never ever let me down, and I'd like to think that would be true whatever we're going through at the moment. So happy to stay around, happy to pray. Just really encourage you that everyone in this room is that amazing missionary that God is using, and you may not see it. So be encouraged. It may be a very traditional work you're doing, the same way as I was running the distribution centre. But even then, God was at work, because there was that one God person that was the sort of salt and light in that area. So big thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to chatting with anybody afterwards. So thanks very much indeed.